Okay, in this section we're going to take the walk that we have created and turn it into a cycle. So in order to do this, the most important thing is to make sure that your cycle is seamless, because it becomes a lot harder to make changes to your animation once you have cycled it. You could do it by deleting the cycle, but it can be complicated to see where the cycle ends or restarts if you don't happen to remember. So I'm going to just test this by bringing that in, this workspace in, or the duration down, to 24 frames. That's the length of the walk before it starts over again. I'm going to turn on the loop and I'm going to play it just to make sure it looks good. So assuming that you're pretty happy with this walk and you're ready to loop it or cycle it, I'm going to grab this and I'm going to just extend the duration. I'm just going to extend it a while. Let's shrink. Down here at the bottom where you have this little magnifying glass and a slider, that allows us to change the zoom of our timeline. So if I wanted to zoom this out really far so that I could extend this more easily. Okay. That should give us a bit of time. So now what I want to do is, I don't want to copy it right now as it is, just because I have this last frame and this first frame as the same. When I copy and paste the cycle, that's going to put this frame down at the end, which would mean that that would cause whenever it loops to have this position pasted back to back, so that we would have it for 2 frames where everything else is on 1s, and that would cause it to have it would get a little choppy at the end. This frame would be held for 2 frames rather than 1. So I'm just going to delete it. So you want to make sure that it's a seamless transition. And you can decide if you want to have the labels or not. I'm going to say no. I'm going to leave the labels off of the duplicates. That'll make it a little easier if I do decide to make any changes to remember when the next cycle starts. So I'm going to, and I'm not going to copy and paste the ground, I'm just going to extend the exposure for it. So all it is that I want to duplicate are the arms, head, body, and legs. So I'm going to select the first top left or bottom left or top right or bottom right. Doesn't matter which one, you just want to do one of the corners. And then if you hold down Shift and select the opposite, that will cause everything to be highlighted. Then we're going to right mouse click, copy cells from the timeline, and then I'm going to go to the next empty frame. And the empty frame is a darker gray frame. I'm going to click on one of them, the top or the bottom, hold down Shift, select the opposite, right mouse click, paste, cycle. And we're going to change the number of cycles. I'm just going to make it 10. And then cycle type, normal forwards. That just means that it's going to replay the first 24 frames over and over and over and over again. If you do reverse, that just would cause cause the character to step forward and then step back, and then step forward and then step back. Or forward reverse does it back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So reverse is if you had the character going forward already once, and then you want them to go backwards once. Forward reverse kind of goes back and forth and back and forth. So does reverse forward, it's just the order of it that changes. But it's just normal forward that we want. I'm going to hit OK. And the ground's going to disappear. I'm just going to extend that. Fn F5. And let's extend this a little further. Okay, I'm going to extend it to that point. There we go. And that way, if it does jump back to the beginning, it'll still be seamless. Yeah, that's where we would want it to be. Okay, so now I'm going to play it. And now it's looping seamlessly even if I have that off. It'll stop at the end. But now the character's walking. And again, what we're going to be looking for here is any kind of pops, jolts, anything jerky or unexpected, and that's usually going to be at the end of the cycle. So it's usually going to be when it's returning back to the original contact. Okay, so assuming that everything's good, now we're ready to try placing the character on a peg and moving the peg around. Because the positive thing about having a character walk in place, and the whole reason why we do it, is that if we loop it, then we can take the time that we've spent to create a single loop, or the first set for the cycle, and then we can extend that. We can repeat the cycle as many times as we want. So we could take something that all the time that we spent on 1 second of animation and make it apply to 4 seconds, 8 seconds, 12 seconds, 20 seconds. Anytime that we need to repeat this walk cycle in the project, if you're working on an animated short or a series. So, of course, we're not always going to want to scroll the background. We're going to want to scroll the character around. So to do that, we're going to need to put the character on a peg. And if you are not done with rendering out the character, so for example, I have not added any kind of clothing, no mouth, no hair, no hand details, this character's not essentially done yet. Well, you can continue and work and finish the character before putting them on a peg. But you can also put them on a peg now to see how it looks when you walk them around, to see if there's any kind of issues that come up that are hard to tell when the character's walking in place. Because we can actually disable the peg so the character continues to walk in place again, and then we can make any changes we want, and then we can activate the peg again. So this is not a permanent change of which you can no longer make adjustments to the walk if you put on a peg. It's not that serious. So there's a few ways to do it. The way that I would recommend is if you have Premium, you can go into the node view. Now the node view might look a little scary at first because it looks like a bunch of plugs, and if you've never worked with Maya, this doesn't look familiar at all, and if you have worked with Maya, then this might look a little bit familiar. But no need to worry. This section's actually not as scary as it looks, and then once you get used to it, there are so many ways that you can simplify the process. There's so many things you can do in Harmony that if you're able to access. So I'm going to move this over to the left a little bit by moving my mouse to the middle, this little middle bar, so that I get a little black arrow that's pointing left and right. And I'm just using that to make this section bigger, so it'll be a little easier for me to see. So right now, all the nodes are sitting on top of each other. And each node represents different elements on each. So we have reference, which is a layer. We have body, which is a layer. Legs, which is a layer. Camera, which is also a layer. We have right, which is on everything. We don't have any other elements yet. That has to do with if you're going on the layer. Again, not something you have to worry about right now. This looks scary because it's red. It's bright red. But that's actually not a bad thing either. Red just means that your layer is currently invisible. If I poke the visibility of it, it turns blue. So that's just to let us know that you cannot see this layer right now. It is invisible, but it's still there. It still exists. And camera is a different color. Again, nothing's wrong with it. It's just, it's not attached to anything. It's still there, and actually in here we can see it. It's just free-floating. So, and you have the composite, which holds everything in place, which is why everything's plugged into it. But right now, this looks like a mess. And this would be not hard to organize, but a little bit time-consuming for no reason, especially if you had lots and lots of layers, which can absolutely happen during a production. So if we want to organize this quickly in a more automated way, we can select all of it by left mouse down and dragging until they're all lit up, or all the ones you want to be affected are lit up. And then you can go to this little stack right here with the arrow pointing up or pointing down. It doesn't matter which one you select, the difference is how they're ordered. So I'm going to click on the order node view down, and it says X overlap 25%, layer spacing 60, vertical spacing 5. I'm going to hit OK. And there we go. We have all of the drawing layers up here. We have the camera hanging out to the side. We have the composite, which is the main thing that everything is connected to. If you've ever worked with After Effects, that would be like a composition. If you've ever worked with a video editing software, it might be called a scene, or it might be called a sequence. But the thing is, you can actually have more than one composition in a project. So it's not, in this program, it's not the same as a scene, because a scene in this software is a whole document, like a whole file with all the elements inside. But you can actually have multiple compositions inside the same document. But no need to worry about that right now. So we have the arms, the head, body, and legs. These are the 4 elements that we want to attach to a peg that controls the position of all of them. We don't want to grab the ground. We don't want the labels to follow. We don't want the reference to follow. Just these 4. So there are a few ways to do it. One, you can go in here, left mouse down and drag so that all 4 are selected, and hold down Shift P. Sorry, Command P. Hold down Command P. And that will pull a parent peg that controls everything that is selected at the same time. So these 4 were selected at the same time, so this peg controls all 4 of them. So you can see you have a green square that has the word peg in it, and I'm going to change the name of that because the name peg is not that helpful. You can change the name by double-clicking on it, and I'm going to change the peg to character walk cycle. And it's an underscore, character underscore walk cycle. There we go. So this one peg, and with the peg selected, if I were to select any of the advanced controllers, I could see that it places the controller kind of right on by the character's hips. I'm going to move it. So you can really move it anywhere. The thing to consider is where would be the best representation of where the character is. So if it's over here, that's not a helpful position, because if you're trying to move the character here and your controller is all the way up here, that's not helpful. And you can move the controller without moving the character with it by moving your arrow of your mouse on top of the little purple and blue circle, and you'll know you have it correct if it's a little P appears. So I'm going to left mouse down and drag. Another thing to consider is this will also be your point of rotation if there was one. So I'm just adding a rotation here. At the moment, the rotation is really not important because we're not really going to be rotating this character, but there are many times where that can be important. Now, one thing you also might notice is whenever I had moved this, it placed a little red square. Now I'm hitting Command Z to undo, and therefore it goes away because I've undid it. But what that means is whenever you're using the advanced controls on a peg or on any kind of drawing layer, it is actually possible to move the drawing layer as well as the peg. But it's better to move the peg, the drawing layer, because if I were to want to replace this character with another, I can attach them to that peg. So if I wanted to, let's say, replace the drawings here, the character is just a rough, very, very rough drawing, and I want to use this as a reference, but actually draw the character fully rendered on top of it. Well, I can do that and attach them to the same peg, and the peg will still animate the character the same way. But if we were to use the advanced controls on the drawings rather than on the pegs, then it's connected to that drawing specifically, and it would be really hard, if not impossible, to switch that drawing out. So it would be better to have any kind of movement that you want to do with these tools, the advanced animation tools, done to the peg that the drawings are attached to, rather than to the drawings themselves. So we have the character walk cycle. It is the parent of arms, head, body, and legs. We can tell in the node view because the peg is a green bar, so that just means that it's a peg, and it's connected from the bottom to the top of these drawing layers. So again, that just means that this is the leader, these are the followers. If I were to move this around, they all follow, all the body parts follow. So that's good. The body parts are following, and the elements that are not meant to be connected to it, such as the ground, are not moving. We don't want anything that's not supposed to be part of the character to move with the peg. So I did move it, and it did cause a little square on the timeline. The square represents what's called a keyframe. Keyframe is not the same thing as creating an empty drawing. In some software, they can be a little similar, depending on the setup. But in here, it's very different. A keyframe here in the context of the advanced animation controls means that this is a frame that has information about the position, the velocity, the angle, and the scale and the skew. So this information is inside of this peg on this point. So if you did move this and there is no keyframe that is appearing, check to the left here towards the bottom of your toolbar. There's what should be a little running stick figure, little running man, and that refers to whether keyframes are placed automatically when you use the advanced animation controls. If you want to turn that off, so let's say you wanted to use the advanced animation controls to simply move your object, you're not doing it with the intent of animating it, you're doing it to make a permanent change, then you could just turn off the animate. Turn animate off, the guy will look like he's standing there, and then you can move it around as needed, and then when you're ready to animate, you can turn it back to the running guy. But I actually do want to animate this. I want to get this character to walk across the stage to see if the walk cycle looks okay when actually in motion. Again, it'd be a little hard to tell. So, or hard to tell if there's mistakes sometimes when they're walking in place. So, I'm going to go and choose somewhere later, I'm guessing, on my timing right now. So I'll go to frame 80. Again, it's just a guess. I'm going to grab this pink arrow because I want to move the character only horizontally. The character is not to move vertically right now. I'm going to push it over to the left. I'm just going to have the character walk off screen. And I want her to be far enough off screen that her heel doesn't keep sticking out, like when she's in a contact position or down. I don't want her foot to continuously come back into the camera view. This square, or this rectangle, is a representation of the camera view. You can also move the camera or animate the camera, but assuming we don't want to do that, we'll just make sure the character starts off stage and ends off stage. So I'm going to hit the play button and see how quick the walk is. That was a pretty decent guess, actually. Let's try that again. Okay. It's a decent guess, but there is a slide here. So let's try making the walk a little quicker. And let's shrink the duration. The original speed might have been alright. Was it 80? Okay. Okay, that actually looks pretty good. There's a little bit of a slide with the red foot. A little tiny one with the blue foot, too. We could speed it up maybe a little bit more. Okay. For the most part, it looks pretty good. Let's see if we can make it look. Okay. So we could scrub it slowly. Okay. Okay, so there is that slide here. And then when the other foot contacts, it's a little bit of a slide. Okay. So let's see if we can adjust the foot. Turn on onion skin, but not that far. Okay, well there is a foot shrinking right here. Oops. So I'll just expand that. Okay, and right here, right. Let's grab this foot and move it over. Grab this foot and move it over. We can adjust the rest of the leg in a minute. Okay, adjust that. Okay, so before I fix the rest of the leg, let's make sure, and it does disconnect, it does cause the ankle to break off. I'm not going to worry about that yet. I'm going to see if the foot position looks okay now for the rest of the animations. Turn off onion skin. Okay, so I'm just watching is the foot. Okay, that looks better. Of course, the ankle breaking off doesn't, but because I fixed it once, and once you fix it the first time, so here's the foot position fixed, the ankle's not, of course, but we can fix that. I just want to make sure the foot looks good. So now, when the character steps again, you'll see the foot's going to break off again. Because one thing that is helpful using the cycling is that these are referencing the same drawings. You don't have to fix them over and over and over again. So I can fix this anytime in the animation. Anytime that this repeats, I can fix it. So let's, that's right, the legs are the same layer. So let's make a careful selection of just this leg. There we go. Okay, so now every instance that this frame happens is fixed, or should be. Okay, boom, boom. Okay, there's a little slide forward there, so let's adjust this foot. And push this back. Okay. There we go, that's better. Okay, let's turn off the onion skin. Okay, this. Okay, so there are some volume control issues with the foot. That's okay. This is an early draft. We can always fix it. And again, because this is attached to the peg, that's not a problem. When we go and create the next rendering of the character, we can attach them to the same peg. The challenge of this, the only thing to consider, or the only thing you have to really be concerned about, is just making sure that you remember where the first cycle ends, or how long the cycle is. So that when you're repeating it, you know where, well, you'll know it starts here, with the first contact. So again, the challenge will just be making sure that that you know where to stop. So we would be stopping here and creating the next set of cycles. But if you put some kind of label here, like new cycle begins here, let's just do that. Create labels. new cycle starts here. There we go. And then once we start creating more layers for the character, we have that. And there we go. Let's turn off labels again. And we do have that issue with the blue leg. We'll deal with that in a minute. Boom, boom. Okay, break. There we go. Red foot just broke. As you do. Let's make a selection of this leg. Oops. Helps to be on the leg layer. There we go. So we're going to make a selection of this leg. And I'm just going to try to reconnect it. If I had to redraw it, I could. We could do that. But if it's not necessary. Okay. Just. Let's keep the heel down for that. For this pose. Okay. And I believe we had yeah. That blue foot needs a... Okay. Let's take that and... nudge it. Nudge it. Oops. Okay. Adjust the feet. Oops. Turn it blue. Alright. And so the leg is going to disconnect, but we're checking to see if the feet are maintaining contact with the ground and not sliding around. Then we can always fix the legs. Better. Alright. So... Okay, so I'll add just the leg. Okay, so I think we've got the walk adjusted. Character's feet should be sticking. And there we go. Character's walking stably across the stage. So now that I know that the character makes pretty good contact and the walk, assuming that you're happy with the way the character walks and how quick they go across the stage and that it feels natural, then next we can start making adjustments to the character and start refining that character. And so that'll be the next thing we do.